I still remember the exact moment my entire family's world collapsed around me. And it wasn't because of some tragic accident or a terrible diagnosis. It was because of a single, arrogant sentence that came out of my sister's mouth over a crackling phone line while I was standing in my living room surrounded by suitcases and wrapped presents. My sister, the one I had looked up to my entire childhood, the one who had held my hand at our mother's funeral, actually had the audacity to say to me, "If you won't come and babysit my 5 kids for the entire week, so I can have a break, then don't you dare bother showing up for Christmas at all, because I don't want to see your selfish face." And in that moment, standing there with my husband staring at me in disbelief, I felt something inside me just snap, like a rubber band that had been stretched too thin for far too many years. And I realized that this wasn't just about one holiday anymore. This was about my entire existence being defined by everyone else's needs while my own life crumbled into dust. So, I want you to tell me right now, was I the monster for what I did next, or was I finally just a woman who had reached her absolute breaking point? Because I didn't just cancel my travel plans, I canceled everything, and in doing so, I set off a chain reaction of chaos, guilt, and fury that I don't think my family will ever recover from. To really understand why that phone call cut me so deeply, you have to know the history, and I mean the real history, not the sanitized version we tell at Thanksgiving dinners when we're pretending to be one big happy clan. I am the youngest of 3, with my sister Sarah being the golden child, the firstborn, the one my parents poured all their hopes and dreams into. And then there's my brother Michael, who is the middle child and has spent his entire life just trying to stay out of the crossfire. Growing up, Sarah was always the boss of me, always telling me what to do, where to sit, what to wear, and my parents just let her because they said she was helping and looking out for her little sister. But it wasn't help, it was control, and it shaped me into a people pleaser who could never say no, who always put everyone else's happiness above my own because I was terrified of being called selfish or ungrateful. Even when I got married to my amazing husband, David, that dynamic didn't change, because Sarah just expanded her territory to include him too, telling us where we should live, how we should decorate our house, and even how we should plan our vacations. David has always been my rock, my anchor, but even he has admitted that watching my family walk all over me has been one of the hardest parts of our marriage, because he sees me as a strong, capable woman, while my family sees me as a doormat with a pulse. Fast forward to last year, Sarah had her 5th child, a beautiful baby girl, but by then she had already turned into the kind of mother who treats her children like accessories and her siblings like unpaid staff. She has this massive house in the suburbs, a husband who works long hours and barely lifts a finger at home, and she has made it her life's mission to constantly tell me that since I don't have kids of my own, I have all the free time in the world, and therefore owe it to her to help out whenever she snaps her fingers. And for years, I bought into that guilt. I flew across the country multiple times a year to help her with the kids. I spent my own money on plane tickets. I took unpaid time off work. And I sacrificed my own mental health just to keep the peace. But this year was different. This year David and I had finally saved up enough money for a trip we had been dreaming about for 5 years. A romantic getaway to the mountains where we were supposed to just have some peace, some quiet, and maybe rekindle the spark that had been smothered by all the family drama. We had planned this for months. We had booked the cabin. We had arranged for our dog to be taken care of, and we were so excited that we were practically buzzing with joy. But of course, as soon as Sarah caught wind of our plans, she started her campaign to sabotage them, calling me every single day to talk about how stressed she was, how she needed a break from the kids, and how it would be so nice if her favorite sister could just come over and give her a hand. I gently reminded her that David and I had our own plans, but she just laughed it off like it was some kind of joke, like my life and my marriage were just side quests in her grand narrative. The final argument started 2 weeks before Christmas, when Sarah called me up and said, "Look, I've already booked my flight to the Caribbean. It's a surprise for my husband, and the kids are going to be with the nanny part of the time, but I really need you to be here for the week to manage everything while I'm gone." I was literally speechless because I could not believe she would just assume, with zero regard for my own life, that I would drop everything to go babysit 5 kids for an entire week, including Christmas, while she went on a tropical vacation. I stammered out a weak response, telling her that I had my own holiday plans, that David and I were going on our mountain trip, but she just cut me off and said, "Oh please, you can go to the mountains anytime, this is Christmas, family comes first, you don't even have kids, so you don't understand the kind of exhaustion I deal with." And that was the moment I felt something shift. I felt this cold wave of clarity wash over me. And I told her that no, I wasn't going to cancel my trip, and that maybe she should consider hiring an actual babysitter for once. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening, and I could practically hear her jaw hitting the floor, because in 30 years of being her sister, I had never talked back to her like that, not even once. She then delivered that ultimatum, that if I wouldn't babysit the kids, I shouldn't even show up to Christmas, and she said it with such venom, such spite, that I realized she didn't see me as a sister anymore. She saw me as an employee who was refusing to clock in. And that brings me back to that moment in my living room, with David holding my hand, looking at me with those eyes that said, "I'm with you no matter what." And I just calmly said to her, "Okay, I won't come," and I hung up. But here's the thing about me, when I finally make a decision, I don't just do it halfway, I go all the way, and I decided that if I wasn't going to be welcome at Christmas, then I wasn't going to be welcome anywhere in her life for the foreseeable future. I called the airline, and I canceled my plane tickets to her city, and then I looked at David and said, "What if we don't go to the mountains either? What if we just stay here and have our own Christmas, just the two of us, and let everyone else think whatever they want?" David, being the amazing man he is, just smiled and said, "Baby, I have been waiting years for you to finally put your foot down, so wherever you want to go, or wherever you want to stay, I'm right there with you." So we canceled our mountain trip too, and we called all of our friends and invited them over for a low-key, no-fuss Christmas dinner, because we realized that we didn't need the mountains to reconnect. We just needed to be away from the toxicity that had been poisoning my life for decades. Now, the chaos that ensued after those cancellations is something I can't even fully describe to you, because it spread through the family like wildfire, and people I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly calling me, texting me, and filling my voicemail with messages that ranged from, "Please reconcile with your sister," to "You are the most selfish person I have ever met." My mother, who is usually the peacekeeper, even called me and said, "You know how Sarah is, why do you have to make such a big deal out of this? Just apologize and go to her house, because Christmas is about family." And I had to stop her right there and say, "Mom, it's about family for me too, but I am family and nobody in this family has ever treated me like I matter." That shut her up pretty quickly, because I think it was the first time she ever heard me actually talk about my own needs instead of just smoothing things over for the sake of appearances. But meanwhile, Sarah went absolutely ballistic, posting vague, passive-aggressive statuses on social media about how some people have no loyalty, and how real family would never abandon you, and all this nonsense that made her look like the victim. She was telling everyone who would listen that I had ruined Christmas for her children, that I had deprived them of their aunt, and that I was some kind of heartless monster who had chosen a vacation over her own blood. And you know what? Let me just say this. I was not choosing a vacation over them. I was choosing my sanity, my marriage, and my own life over a dynamic that had been draining the soul out of me for years. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. And before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just rolled over and gone back to your sister like nothing happened? Would you have compromised and just gone for one day to keep the peace? Or would you have done exactly what I did and just cut all ties, at least for the holidays? Because honestly, I was wrestling with so much guilt and second-guessing. I kept waking up in the middle of the night wondering if I had made a massive mistake, if I was being too harsh, if I was just being prideful and stubborn. But then I would remember that cruel voice on the phone saying, "Don't bother showing up," and my guilt would just evaporate into pure resolve. The climax of this whole disaster happened on Christmas Eve, when I was at home with David, cooking a small but perfect dinner, and my doorbell rang. I opened the door, and standing there in the freezing cold was my brother Michael, who had driven 9 hours with his wife and 2 kids just to see me, and he said, "I'm not going to Sarah's, I'm spending Christmas with the person who actually has a heart." I burst into tears right then and there because I had no idea he felt that way. And he told me that he had been watching Sarah walk all over me for years, and he was just as fed up as I was. We spent Christmas morning together, just my little group of outcasts, and it was the most peaceful, genuine, happy Christmas I had ever had. Without any passive-aggressive comments, without any drama, just love and laughter. Sarah, on the other hand, spent her Caribbean vacation obsessively checking her phone, posting rants, and trying to get everyone to choose sides. But when she came back to an empty house and realized that her other siblings had boycotted her event, she absolutely lost her mind. She sent me a venomous text that said, "Congratulations, you have officially destroyed this family. I hope you're happy." To which I just replied, "I am happy, for the first time in years, I am actually happy." And I blocked her number, because I realized that I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I didn't need to justify my existence, and I didn't need to apologize for finally putting myself first after a lifetime of being last. The aftermath has been a little messy, with my mother being caught in the middle and some extended family members thinking I'm a villain, but I have also received messages from cousins and aunts who told me they were proud of me, because they had seen how I was treated and they wished they had the courage to do the same. In the end, I still don't know if I was right or wrong, but I do know that I feel lighter, freer, and more like myself than I have in my entire adult life. The moral of this story, if there is one, is that family is supposed to be a source of love and support, not a source of obligation and control. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the people who truly care about you is to walk away from the people who are just using you. So if you are on my side like this video, and if you think I made the right call, I want you to hit that like button right now because it really does help this channel grow. If you have ever had to stand up to a toxic family member, subscribe to this channel because I share stories like this all the time, and I want you to know that you are not alone in this struggle. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Tell me about your own holiday horror stories. Or tell me that I'm a horrible person if that's what you really think. I'm open to hearing all of it. I'll see you all in the next story. Take care of yourselves. And remember, you matter, even when your family tries to make you feel like you don't.